It started with a voicemail. That's the part one can't get out of my head. Not the crash, not the court, not the cold echo of the holding cell door clanging shut behind me. Just that single, stupid voicemail. Monday morning, 9:42 a.m. I was folding laundry, trying to get grape juice out of one of the twins' shirts with a homemade solution Brittany swore by vinegar and baking soda. My phone buzzed once, then again. I didn't recognize the number. I figured it was spam and let it go to voicemail. Then I saw the transcription pop up on my screen. Hi, this is Carla from Channel 7. We just wanted to confirm a few details before airing your wife's interview regarding the accident and allegations. We want to ensure accuracy. Please call us back. Thank you. I played it twice, then a third time. Allegations? Interview? What was there to confirm? I checked the news. I don't know why, instinct maybe. There it was. Front page of the station's website. Her face, eyes puffy but mascara intact, sitting too perfectly in a pale blue blouse I knew she never wore unless she was performing. The headline read, "Survivor of terrifying car crash speaks out. I believe my husband sabotaged the brakes." The article was a blur. My hands weren't shaking. My whole body was humming like I'd stuck a fork into an outlet. Just the night before, Brittany had sat across from me at dinner, scrolling through her phone, sipping wine, nodding distractedly at the kids' stories about dinosaurs and pirates and who got to hold the green crayon. She kissed me on the cheek, said she had a meeting first thing in the morning, and went to bed early. She even turned the baby monitor toward my side, like always. Now she was telling the country I tried to kill her and our children. I drove straight to the hospital. Not a word to anyone. No calls. Nothing. Just keys, jacket, go. I didn't even grab my wallet. When I arrived, she was in a conference room near the pediatric wing, sitting with some guy in a suit and a woman holding a notepad. Press. Lights. Cameras. I saw her through the glass, nodding solemnly as if she just buried a loved one. Our twins were in a nearby room, watching cartoons on a tablet. Bandages on their foreheads, a tiny cast on Lucas's arm. That sight cracked me open, not the accusation, not the betrayal. Seeing my kids hurt while their mother played actress on live TV. I waited until the interview was over. Didn't make a scene. Just stood there breathing. When she finally walked out, she barely looked surprised to see me. I was going to call you, she said, like she was letting me down easy after canceling dinner plans. I asked her what the hell she was doing. You know exactly what I'm doing, she said. I laughed. I actually laughed. Because I didn't. I had no idea what game we were suddenly playing. She walked past me toward the vending machines and said, without turning, "You told me you'd never let me leave with the kids. And now, I've got my chance." That was the first time I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a panic reaction or a dramatic moment spun out of grief. No, she planned this. Scripted it. Every word, every angle. The crash was real, the injuries, the damage, all of it, but the story she built on top of it was fake. A polished lie designed to bury me. I followed her. Quiet, calm. Too calm. I'd never hurt them, I said. You know that. You know that. She took her sweet time choosing between trail mix and pretzels. Didn't answer. Just as the machine word to life, she said, "Doesn't matter what I know. It matters what I can prove." And just like that, I realized I was no longer her husband. I was her escape route. Her storyline. Her villain. That night, the police came to our house. I opened the door, still in the same shirt I'd worn to the hospital. They asked me to come with them. Just a few questions, they said. But the cuffs were ready. They knew why they were there. As I sat in that concrete room across from a detective who barely looked up from his notes, I kept thinking, what's the endgame? What is she doing? Then, 2 days later, from my cell, my lawyer came to see me. He dropped a folder onto the table. "There's something you should see," he said. I opened it. Emails. Screenshots. Receipts. Photos. Surveillance stills. Her. With someone else. Multiple nights. Hotel bars. Late check-ins. Early morning exits. Her boss. The same boss she told me was like a mentor. And suddenly, the crash, the press, the accusations, it all snapped into place like a loaded trap. But this was only the beginning. The first photo in that folder hit me harder than the jail cell door. Her and that smug bastard, Dean Caraway, regional director at her firm, sitting in a bar I recognized from our own anniversary dinner last year. Her arm resting casually over his thigh, that same flirty smirk she used to give me when she wanted to get her way. His hand on her lower back like he owned her. Like I never existed. "You sure this is enough to prove motive?" I asked my lawyer, Noah. He was younger than I expected, but he had that ruthless, quiet confidence that didn't need sharpening. He didn't look up. "It's not just motive. It's a pattern. She's been pulling money from your joint account, too." I blinked. "What?" 3 withdrawals. 10 grand total. All cash. All right before the crash. I leaned back, stared at the cold wall behind him, and said nothing. My mind couldn't catch up. Like everything I knew about her had been yanked inside out and thrown in my face. My Brittany, or the version of her I believed in, wouldn't cheat, wouldn't fake a public sob story, wouldn't risk our kids, and sure as hell wouldn't try to frame me. Except now I knew she would. Noah slid another sheet across the table. This is where it gets interesting. We found an internal memo. Dean authorized a project transfer the day before the crash. Brittany was promoted off paper. No HR trail, but her company phone logs show she's been speaking to him past midnight nearly every day for weeks. It's not just an affair. They're building a story. She wants custody, I whispered. She wants to vanish with them. Noah nodded slowly. And the insurance angle? That's their smokescreen. I wanted to vomit. The press was having a field day with it. I didn't have a TV in my cell, but the guards whispered about it. Wife accuses father of attempted murder. Survives crash with kids. Husband in custody. She looked like a hero, a victim, a grieving mother barely holding it together. Behind the scenes, she was plotting a complete erasure of me from my children's lives. Noah leaned forward, lowering his voice even though no one else was near. She knew the brakes were faulty. There's record of a mechanic recommending service 2 weeks ago. She declined. What? She signed the receipt. Ignored the warning. Didn't tell you. I clenched my jaw. So that crash? It could have killed our kids. It almost did. And she was willing to take that risk, let that happen for what? Sympathy? Power? Control? Or maybe just to watch me drown while she played Angel in White. We went to court 3 days later. I was brought in wearing beige prison-issued clothes, cuffs on my wrists, while she wore pearl earrings and soft pastels like she was attending a charity brunch. Her attorney painted me like a sociopath, controlling, jealous, financially unstable. He cited volatile texts she claimed I sent, texts I never wrote. Screenshots that were doctored. But Noah wasn't there to play defense. He was there to pull the pin from the grenade. He waited until her testimony started to fray right as she began to cry for the third time, voice cracking, repeating, he said if he couldn't have us, no one could. That's when he asked the judge for permission to submit new evidence. The courtroom went quiet. He laid out the affair. The hotel bills. The surveillance. The memo. The money trail. Then he handed the judge a notarized statement from the mechanic, timestamped, with a copy of the brake inspection report and Brittany's signature at the bottom. You could hear a pin drop. The judge didn't speak for a full 30 seconds. Just flipped through the pages, face pale, eyes scanning every lie she'd fed the media, the police, the court. Brittany looked like she was made of glass about to shatter. And Dean? He wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. The coward left her to burn alone. She tried to object. Said the papers were forged, that the signature wasn't hers. She looked around, desperate for someone to agree with her, someone to throw her a rope. But no one moved. I watched her crumble brick by brick. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just a cavernous silence, like whatever piece of me that still believed in redemption had been dug out and left behind at the crash site. The judge ordered immediate reevaluation of custody. Said the case was no longer criminal but civil and I'd be released pending further hearings. That was it. Just like that. I walked out of court the next morning into the gray April light, free but hollow. I didn't go home. Home didn't exist anymore. I stayed with my brother, trying to figure out how to explain to my kids that their mother nearly ruined my life and almost ended theirs to protect a man who disappeared the moment the lights got hot, the first time I saw the twins after the crash. They ran to me like nothing had happened. Lucas tripped over his shoelace on the way into my arms and Emma was already crying before she even got close. Daddy, she sobbed, clutching my neck like a lifeline. They didn't know what was going on. They weren't old enough to understand why Mommy told them Daddy was sick and had to go away for a while. But they knew I didn't belong gone. Brittany hadn't expected me to be released so quickly. She thought the narrative was solid, loving mother betrayed by jealous husband. She thought the lie would live long enough to become truth. But when I walked into that supervised visitation room, her face through the one-way mirror said everything. Fear, fury, disbelief. She was losing control. The kids spent the entire hour talking about dinosaurs and telling me which nurses were nice and which ones gave the itchy band-aids. They mentioned a man named Dean once, Mommy's friend who brings her coffee at night. That was it. One mention, but it confirmed everything. After the visit, Noah hit me with another development. Her employer launched an internal investigation, he said, opening his laptop. Turns out she accessed and deleted dozens of internal emails before the crash, all correspondence between her and Dean. IT recovered most of it. He slid the screen toward me. One thread stood out. Titled, Plan B. The emails were cold. Clinical. She talked about escalating the narrative, ensuring custody optics remain favorable, and controlling public sentiment. There were outlines, literal outlines of what to say in interviews. Strategies. Talking points. One line made me physically ill. If there's an opportunity to lean into fear, do it. The more dangerous he looks, the safer I seem. I kept reading. There was a list of triggers. Things she could claim I'd said. Phrases like, I'd rather die than lose my family, or you'll never take them from me. She had these phrases ready, prepped for court. All fake. All rehearsed. She's playing a long game, Noah said. But she underestimated how far you'd go to fight back. I wanted to rage. To scream. But none of that would help me now. I had to be strategic. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about saving my kids from a woman who used them as chess pieces in her career meltdown. Because that's what it was. Dean wasn't in love with her. He never was. The affair had been convenient for both of them. He got his ego fed and she got power. But when she lost control of the narrative, he vanished. Didn't return her calls. Didn't show up to court. HR quietly reassigned him to a satellite office in Nevada. She was radioactive now. And she knew it. A week later, her lawyer requested a private mediation. She wanted a deal, no more interviews, no more public stunts, and most importantly, joint custody. She's scared, Noah said. This isn't generosity. It's self-preservation. I agreed to meet her, not out of pity. I needed to look her in the eye. We met in a cold room with 2 lawyers and a mediator. She came in late, looking smaller than before. Hair unwashed. No makeup. No theatrics. Her voice, though, it still had that edge. That rehearsed calm. She started with, I never meant for it to go this far. I said nothing. She said, Dean manipulated me. I thought he cared. I still said nothing. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. You know me, Kyle. You know I'd never hurt the kids. That's when I finally spoke. You strapped them into a car with broken brakes, Brittany. I know exactly who you are. She didn't respond. Just stared, hollow-eyed, at the table. Her lawyer spoke next, asking me to consider a private resolution for the kids' sake. No more court battles. No more media circus. Just 2 parents trying to rebuild something functional. I told him we could discuss terms. But I'd fight for full custody. And I meant it. Brittany didn't say another word. She stood up and walked out, her heels scraping the floor like chalk on concrete. Later that night, I got a call from Noah. She's fired her lawyer. I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed to my ear. She's spiraling, he continued. And when she falls, she's going to try to take you with her. I looked at the pictures of my kids on the wall, smiling, unbroken, unaware of how close they came to being weapons in their mother's war. I wasn't going to let that happen again. The subpoena landed in her lap like a stone. Delivered to her doorstep on a rainy Thursday morning, served right in front of her neighbors while she stood in a silk robe holding her oat milk latte. According to my brother's girlfriend, who lived 2 doors down from her, Brittany turned the same color as that pale gray sky and slammed the door so hard the wreath fell off. Inside that envelope? Every email. Every text. The full mechanic report. The deleted messages she thought were gone forever. And a court order demanding she appear in front of a judge, not for custody, not for divorce, but for defamation and fraud. My lawyer had taken it to the next level. Because clearing my name wasn't enough anymore. She didn't get to walk away from this with her job, her image, or her hands clean. She thought I'd roll over. She thought I'd beg for peace. But she forgot something important. I have nothing left to lose, and men like that are dangerous. In the days that followed, everything started unraveling around her. The media shifted tone. Suddenly the brave mother's story had inconsistencies. A local paper ran a quiet piece titled, Doubts Emerge in Viral Crash Case. Did a PR executive frame her husband? It quoted an anonymous source from inside her company who confirmed Brittany was under internal ethics review. Her firm issued a brief statement distancing themselves from her ongoing personal legal matter. That's corporate speak for, you're toxic now. Stay away. But the true collapse began with her parents. They'd always been supportive, blind to her flaws, enchanted by her career moves and polished Instagram posts of family life that didn't match reality. But when the truth started coming out, when the evidence showed what she'd actually done, they called me. Not her. Me. Her mother was crying. Her father, a former Navy man who once called me soft, apologized. Actually said the words, I was wrong about you. That didn't bring peace. It brought grief. Because even if the world believed me now, even if she lost her job and her reputation and custody, it didn't undo what was done. It didn't give me back the nights I spent alone in that cell, imagining my kids hurt or scared or thinking their dad had turned into a monster. It didn't erase the nightmares of watching Brittany point at me on live television and say I wanted her dead. It didn't undo her. Still, something had shifted. The silence on her end wasn't strategic anymore, it was panicked. For the first time in this twisted ordeal, she didn't have the next move. So she made one last, desperate play. The message came through Noah late Friday. She wanted to talk. Alone. No lawyers. She says it's about the kids, Noah said, though he sounded unconvinced. But she emphasized privacy. Repeatedly. I agreed. Not because I trusted her, I didn't, but because I needed to look her in the eye and ask her why. Not the press version. Not the court version. The truth. We met at a neutral site, an old church repurposed as a community center. Empty that evening. Quiet. We sat in an office with beige walls and a ticking clock so loud it felt intentional. She looked thinner. Pale. Exhausted. But not humbled. No, Brittany never looked humbled. Just paused. Like a con artist who knows the show is almost over and isn't sure whether to double down or run. She opened with this. I was drowning. Dean offered me a ladder. I didn't know it was made of fire. I waited. I never planned to hurt the kids, she continued. But once the crash happened and the media came, it all happened so fast. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't want to stop it, I said. You wanted it to work. She looked up finally. Eyes not watering, not even pretending to cry this time. You were always too quiet, Kyle. You never fought me. You just let things happen. I thought if I made you look like a villain, you'd finally react. I stared at her, my heart a frozen weight in my chest. You tried to burn me alive for a reaction? No, she said quickly, voice trembling. Not like that. I was scared. Of losing everything. You were everything, I snapped, louder than I intended. You were my home. And you demolished it with a smile. She looked away. The silence stretched. Then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She smiled. Just faintly. Just enough to remind me who I was dealing with. You're going to get everything you want now, she said softly. The kids. Your name cleared. The headlines. Congratulations. This isn't about winning, I said. She nodded absently, still not really listening. But it is now. Isn't it? When I left the center, I knew one thing for certain, she hadn't changed. Not even close. She'd just recalibrated. She'd find another way to twist this story if given the chance. But I wouldn't give her one. A month later, I sat on a wooden bench outside the courthouse with Lucas asleep on my chest and Emma wrapped around my arm like ivy. Custody was no longer a question. Brittany didn't even show up to the final hearing. She'd vanished. Not legally. Her address was still listed. Her phone still rang. But she stopped answering. Her lawyer dropped her case. Her job was officially terminated. Dean's transfer turned permanent. Brittany became a ghost in a city she used to dominate, whispers of scandal clinging to her like perfume gone sour. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. It felt like a war no one won. I got full custody. The judge called her a volatile presence and cited calculated deception as grounds to limit all unsupervised contact. Brittany was granted visitation rights once a month with a monitor present, no overnights, no travel. But every time I mentioned her visit days to the kids, they'd change the subject. Lucas said she was mean in her eyes. Emma called her the pretend mommy. And then came the letter. It arrived folded into thirds, no return address. Handwritten in her precise, clinical cursive. Kyle, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that's off the table. I'm not asking for understanding either, I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that everything I built around myself was hollow. Dean, the job, the image. It was all scaffolding around a version of me that didn't really exist. You loved the real me. I hated her. When I looked at you and the kids, I felt so small. Like I didn't belong. I tried to destroy what made me feel inferior, and you got caught in that fire. I'm leaving the state. I won't fight the order. The kids deserve better than my confusion. I hope you find peace. Maybe someday I will too. B. I read it twice, then burned it. Not out of spite. Just finality. She wanted an ending. So I gave it to her. But life doesn't pause for drama. It grinds forward, uneven and messy. The twins started preschool in the fall. Emma made friends easily. Lucas clung to me at drop-off for weeks. I started cooking more. Sleeping better. I kept my phone on silent at night. But I noticed things. Things she'd left behind. The smell of her shampoo still haunted the hall closet. The outline of her heels still pressed into the entryway mat. Her Pinterest login was still saved on the laptop. 100 unfinished boards, summer party ideas, best kids' bedrooms, outfits for court. That last one made me stop. It wasn't accidental. She'd titled it that on purpose. This had always been performance to her. A play. A monologue. She never planned to win by truth, she planned to win by applause. But no one's clapping now. Then came the first monitored visit. The kids were wary. She brought a stuffed animal they'd both long forgotten, tried to play tea party like nothing had happened. Lucas ignored her completely. Emma stared at her the way you stare at lightning in the distance, awed, scared, curious. Brittany smiled too much. Laughed at things that weren't funny. The monitor recorded everything, noted the forced energy, the odd pauses. I read the report afterward. Mother exhibited strained engagement, repeatedly asked children if they missed her. Children showed minimal interest in continued interaction. That night, Lucas asked if she was going away again. I told him not unless you want her to stay. He nodded. That was enough. Then, one rainy evening in early December, the phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was short. You win. I don't know what that means anymore, but you win. Don't let them hate me. I didn't call back. Because this was never about winning. This was about surviving something most people don't come back from, being betrayed so intimately it rewires your soul. But I'm still standing. There's something no one tells you about surviving someone else's lie. The silence afterward isn't peaceful. It's echoing. It's loud in a different way. Brittany was gone from our daily lives. No more courtrooms, no more letters, no more headlines. The case was closed. The accusations were officially retracted in a quiet legal footnote signed by her new attorney, a clean little document stating Mr. Taylor acted in no way maliciously or unlawfully regarding the events of March 4th. No apology. Just sterilized words. But it was enough to erase the charges. Enough for the press to look the other way and move on. People stopped talking about it. Which should have been a relief. But when you've been dragged through the fire like that, silence doesn't feel safe. It feels like a setup. I started double-checking everything. Stove. Locks. Car tires. The kids' seatbelts. My own texts. Every email I sent. I changed passwords weekly. I scanned my reflection like I was trying to recognize who I was now. The man I was before all this calm, trusting, sure, was gone. And something darker had moved in. My therapist said it was normal. Trauma reshapes you. It teaches you to fear shadows that used to be furniture. But it also sharpens you. Makes you smarter. And maybe colder. I wasn't proud of what I'd become, but I knew it was necessary. One afternoon in January, I got a call from Brittany's sister, Mallory. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd always lived far off in Oregon, a quiet observer of her sister's chaos. But now she sounded urgent. She sent me something, Mallory said. A notebook. Full of writing. I think you need to see it. 2 days later, I had it in my hands. It wasn't a confession. Not really. More like a blueprint. Pages and pages of notes, dates, plans. How she'd prep the crash story. How to craft media sympathy. Phrases to use. Friends to distance. Influencers to contact. One line was underlined twice, control the pain, and people believe it never existed. But then the notes shifted. They grew unstable. Scribbled. Paranoid. She started writing things like, no one will believe him if I smile hard enough. And then, what if the kids see through it? By the end of the book, her handwriting barely resembled itself. It wasn't just delusion. It was obsession. Her world had become a play, and she was so deep in the role she forgot it wasn't real. Mallory didn't want to keep it. Said it scared her. I didn't blame her. I showed it to Noah. He skimmed it, then looked up at me and said something I won't forget. This was never about you. You were just the closest mirror she couldn't crack. And somehow that hurt more than any of it. I spent that night sitting on the floor outside the twins' room, listening to their breathing through the door. They were still innocent. Still untouched by the weight of what happened. But I wasn't naive enough to think that would last forever. Eventually, they'd ask. Eventually, they'd want to know why their mother lives 2 states away and visits like a distant cousin. And when that day came, I swore I wouldn't lie to them. But I'd choose my words carefully. Because this wasn't just about facts, it was about protecting the version of the world they deserved to grow up believing in. The notebook went into the safe. Not to be used. Not to be waved in court or online or anywhere else. Just kept. A reminder of what we survived. You see, healing doesn't look like closure. It looks like rebuilding. It's wiping crayon off the walls. It's teaching your son how to tie his shoes and watching your daughter learn to read. It's noticing how quiet the house is and not flinching. It's laughing again, not the first time, but the third when it no longer feels like treason. But you don't forget. Because forgetting is how you fall for it again. It started with an envelope. No postage, no return address, just left at my doorstep one cloudy afternoon while the twins were building a pillow fort in the living room. I wouldn't have even noticed it if Emma hadn't yelled, "Daddy, there's something weird by the door." Inside, a photograph. A grainy shot printed on standard paper, Brittany standing outside a grocery store 2 towns over. Holding a toddler. Not ours. For a moment, everything in me just stopped. There was no note, no explanation. Just that image, taunting and cryptic. I stared at it for hours. An unfamiliar kid, maybe 2 years old, maybe younger, squirming in her arms while she spoke to someone off camera. I flipped the photo over. Nothing. Blank. I called Noah. He came straight over. "She had another child?" he asked, frowning at the picture. "You sure it's recent?" "I don't know what I'm sure of anymore." We pulled up Brittany's known addresses. That store wasn't near any of them. In fact, it was just outside a place she'd once listed as a work retreat destination. A stretch of rural highway near some upscale vacation rentals. Nothing permanent. Nothing traceable. What is she doing? I said out loud. Is this some kind of message? Noah just sighed. Or a mistake. Or someone wants you to believe it's one. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen staring at the photo. I thought about the way she looked, hair tied back, sunglasses off, no makeup, not posed. Candid. Real. That toddler didn't look afraid. But he didn't look related to her either. My stomach twisted. The next day, a second envelope arrived. This time with a USB drive inside. No label. No context. No advised against plugging it in. We'll scan it first, he said, see if it's a trap. He was right to be cautious. But my instincts told me something else. This wasn't a threat. It was a test. When we opened the files in a secure environment, we found exactly one video. Surveillance footage. Hotel lobby. Dated 2 weeks before her final court no-show. Brittany clearly pregnant. Heavily. Checking in under the name Morgan Lyle. Same alias she'd used once in an old college ID I didn't think she even remembered. She moved with discomfort like she'd been hiding it, enduring it. And she was alone. No sign of Dean. No sign of anyone, really. She walked past the concierge, accepted a key, and vanished into the elevator. That was the last timestamped trace of her anywhere official. My mind spiraled. She had a child with someone else during or after the court case. Or was this something deeper? Had she hidden a pregnancy from everyone and left the state to deliver quietly? Why send me proof now? Unless she didn't. Unless someone else did. Noah dug into the alias. Morgan Lyle had booked 2 other rentals under her name, one outside Sacramento, another in a town so small it barely had cell service. Each for only a few nights. Paid in cash. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the idea that she was spiraling again or the possibility that she was building a new story somewhere new. One with another child. Another man. Or worse, completely alone and off-grid with no plan, no support, and no sense of reality. The next day, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me press accept. Silence. Then, a whisper. He's not yours. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen in the hallway, heart hammering like I'd run a marathon. It didn't make sense. Was it about the boy in the photo? Was it meant to be cruel? Was it even her voice? I called the number back. Disconnected. I reported it, of course. Gave everything to Noah. He promised to escalate it, to track the origin of the call, the footage, the letters. But deep down, I knew what this was. She wasn't gone. She was watching. Somewhere. And she wanted me to know it. Noah called me at 6:17 a.m. just as I was pouring cereal for the kids. I answered with one hand while balancing Lucas on my hip and nudging Emma away from the syrup bottle she'd already opened. She used the alias before, he said without preamble. Morgan Lyle. But not how we thought. I sat down, suddenly cold despite the heat running in the house. How? He paused. She used it in college. As a participant in a sealed program for high-functioning psychological disorders. I had to go through some hoops to get a look at it, and I shouldn't be telling you this yet, but I think you need to see what she left behind. By 10 a.m. I was in Noah's office. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were medical records, redacted names, but the patient profile was unmistakably Brittany or Morgan as she'd registered herself during that time. It was like reading a stranger's biography. She'd been institutionalized briefly at 21 after a failed internship at a major news outlet. Not for violence. Not for anything dramatic. But for identity collapse. That's what the note said. Recurrent dissociation, strategic lying, manipulation of perceived reality, all layered under what they called executive-level composure. Her disorder wasn't the kind that screamed in public. It whispered, intelligent, hidden, systematic. One entry stood out. Subject displays high capacity for controlled deception. Expresses no remorse unless strategically useful. Refers to truth as a tool rather than a moral absolute. Another. Subject maintains multiple narrative versions of her life depending on audience. Appears to function normally under pressure but constructs alternate realities when threatened. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Everything made sense now, the seamless way she flipped between identities, how she adapted so fast under scrutiny, how she could cry on cue and charm a room while planning something venomous underneath. This wasn't new. It wasn't triggered by Dean. It wasn't the crash. It had always been there. And I had never seen it. But the records didn't just tell me about her. They revealed something else. Something darker. During her time in that program, she formed a romantic bond with another patient. A man referred to only as DL. He was discharged shortly before her and listed as likely to reoffend. The final note was simple: separation required for patient recovery. Contact forbidden. I leaned forward. What if Dean Caraway wasn't her first attempt at rewriting her story with a man she could control? Noah's face was grim. That's not even the worst of it. He opened another document. This one was a scanned letter dated only 3 weeks before her first false report against me. It was written in her handwriting. Unsent. Addressed to D. I think about you more than I should. The others, they just orbit. But you were fire. And I'm cold again. I have a plan. You'd love it. This time he's the villain. This time I survive. I stared at it. She was planning this long before she met Dean. She was planning this before your twins were even born, Noah said quietly. Every muscle in my body went rigid. It wasn't just a reaction to a failing marriage. It wasn't about custody or money or rage. This was her system. A cycle. A blueprint she refined over years, waiting for the next story to live in, the next role to manipulate. And I had given her the stage. She's building something again, I said. With this new kid. Whoever he is. Noah nodded. And now we have to ask, does that child even exist? Or is it another prop? I couldn't sleep that night. I walked the house, checked on the kids over and over again. Their little breaths in the dark reminded me what I was protecting, not just from the world, but from a legacy of lies that could still touch them. Then, around 3 a.m., I opened that surveillance video again. Froze it at the moment Brittany, pregnant and alone, turned toward the camera. And for a fraction of a second, something flashed in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. She knew someone would watch this later. She was counting on it. The break came from the unlikeliest place, a postal worker. 3 weeks after we found the surveillance footage, Noah got a call from a private investigator he'd brought in to follow loose ends. They tracked a pattern of prepaid shipments from a town 3 hours north of us, quiet, isolated, full of cabins and disappearing tourists. One of those packages was returned due to an incorrect label. The recipient? A Morganlyle. The sender? An online vendor of baby formula billing to a P.O. box registered under a fake name. But the delivery guy? He remembered her. Yeah, he'd said over the phone. Tall, blonde, kinda intense. Signed every pickup like she was in a hurry. Had a baby with her sometimes. But not always. Noah booked us a cabin in that same town within 48 hours. Legal gray zone be damned. I wasn't going to wait for another surprise letter or another photograph taped to my door. I needed to know what she was doing. I needed to see the shape of her new life, the one she built on the ashes of mine. I didn't tell the kids. I told my brother I had a short trip for work, left him the list of their bedtime songs, the color-coded snack box system, Emma's 2 favorite stories in both formats, hard copy and tablet. It was the first time I'd left them overnight since the custody ruling. And I hated it. We arrived just before dusk, Noah and I, the air sharp with frost, the cabin tiny but serviceable. That night, we waited. Checked in with the PI, who confirmed the mailbox was active. Whoever was using it had picked up twice that week. Then, the next morning, we saw her. She was in the back lot behind the mail center, fumbling with a stroller she clearly didn't know how to collapse. Her hair was darker now, dyed brown, cut into a short, uneven bob, but I'd have known her walk anywhere. The slight lean, the clipped, precise steps. And there was the child. A boy. Maybe 15 months old, bundled in a blue jacket, face hidden under a beanie. He was quiet. Too quiet. I took photos from the car. Not out of revenge, out of necessity. Insurance. Proof. She didn't see us. Back at the cabin, we reviewed everything. Schedules. Pickup times. Patterns. She wasn't working, no sign of employment. No contact with her parents. No health records. Nothing official tied to the child. Which meant either she was hiding him or he wasn't hers. I filed a report through Noah with child welfare under an anonymous tip. That's when it all snapped into motion. The next morning, social workers showed up at the drop point. We stayed back, legally blocked from intervening. But Noah had a drone camera, high-res, silent. We watched in real time as Brittany stepped out of a dark blue SUV with the boy on her hip, approached the center, and was intercepted. At first, she smiled. That polished, PR-minted smile. But as the questions began, ID, custody documentation, medical history, her face changed. Subtle but immediate. Like a crack forming in a frozen lake. Then she turned and tried to walk away. 2 officers were already in position. They stopped her. The child was gently taken from her arms. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stopped. Sat down on the pavement. Folded her arms. Waited. The child, as it turned out, wasn't biologically related to her. His mother had filed a missing persons report 4 days earlier. She was a struggling college student who'd let Morgan, a woman she'd met at a parenting group online, babysit while she went to a job interview. Brittany had said all the right things. Background in early education. Experience with twins. Carefully fabricated reviews. She never brought him back. She'd been playing house. Rehearsing a new story. Until we pulled the curtain back. Brittany was arrested that day under a false identity. charged with kidnapping, fraud, and violating multiple terms of her supervised visitation ruling. The media pounced again, not with sympathy this time, but with teeth bared. The headlines were brutal: crash hoax mom now implicated in infant abduction scheme. This time, she didn't cry for the cameras. She didn't get a lawyer press conference. She didn't get applause. That night, I stood by my children's beds and watched them sleep. My phone was full of messages from reporters, lawyers, people who once doubted me now begging for quotes and comment. But I didn't answer. Because for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the story was over. Almost. The final chapter wasn't a bang. It was a breath. Britney pled guilty to multiple charges: false identity, custodial interference, kidnapping. There was no drawn-out trial, no last-minute denial, no public scene. Just a quiet courtroom in a nowhere town, a few nods between attorneys, and a sentence that ensured she wouldn't see the outside for a long time. The state called me to testify. I declined. There was nothing left to say. I'd already spent years choking on her versions of reality. I wasn't going to offer her the stage again. Not for sympathy. Not for theatrics. She'd taken enough. Instead, I chose the quieter path, rebuilding the world she tried to shatter. Lucas and Emma are 6 now. They laugh like nothing ever touched them. They don't ask about her anymore. The monitored visits were terminated permanently, and Britney hasn't written. Not a letter. Not a postcard. Nothing. I think part of her knows I won't let her reach them. That her stories are over. Her audience is gone. I found work again, freelance IT from home, modest but stable. I coach Lucas's soccer team. Emma wants to learn piano, so I bought an old upright and tuned it myself. Every Friday night we make pizza and watch movies. They fall asleep on the couch and I carry them to bed. And sometimes, only sometimes, I still lock the door twice. Not because I think she's coming back, but because I remember what it felt like when everything safe turned out to be an illusion. I still have that photo. The one of her holding that other child. And the notebook. The scribbled plans, the blueprints for a life of lies. I keep them in a fireproof box, not out of vengeance, but for the same reason you keep old scars, to remember the pain doesn't define you, but it did happen. People ask me now what I'd tell someone going through the same thing. Here's what I say. Don't wait for the mask to slip. Don't waste years justifying bad behavior because you once saw something good underneath. Sometimes, the good is part of the act. Protect your peace like it's a living thing. Guard it. Feed it. Let no one touch it without proving they know its value. And most importantly, when someone writes you into their tragedy as the villain, don't play the part. Write your own ending. Because you survived. And that in the end is the only story worth telling.